All right. Hi, everyone. I am super excited to be joined here by John Burton, the production support manager here at BookBaby. John, thank you for being here.
Happy to be here.
Normally I'm with President Jim Foley, and we're talking about stuff after publish, like book marketing, book distribution, and there's a lot that happens before that, and a lot that's necessary before that, and that's what I kind of want to get into here today. So, what I want to start with, John, is when a client submits their files to BookBaby, everything's in. What is the first thing that happens? Basically, what is prepress review in a nutshell?
Sure. So essentially, prepress review is an operator is going to take your job, and they're going to look over the specs of what you've ordered, your trim size, your cover style, all that kind of stuff, and then they're going to evaluate what you've given us and make sure everything meshes. There's a lot that goes on in the files itself, but at a base level, it's like, okay, you ordered a US trade. Did you upload a 6x9 file for that? Right? Great. If you just opened up in Word and started typing in a US letter size document and exported that, well, that's, can't go any further right there. We've already hit a stop. So in a nutshell, we're making sure the book you ordered that's in your head is what you're going to get based off of the files you've provided to us.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like before we started recording this interview, you were saying like we're not just the people who yell at you, say like, oh, you can't print this. But I want to just kind of go through each stop and share the significance of it so people know why you are doing why you and your team are doing what you're doing, and what would happen if you weren't there, essentially.
Sure. So one of the most common things we have, actually, I can run off. I ran off recently our top 5 most common reasons we're failing jobs for, and they are in order. At the top, missing bleed, which is up from number 2, and our former number 1, low resolution images, out of template files, pagination, and page numbers all on the same side of the page. And to run through those real quick, missing bleed, when you are setting up a file in a digital environment, you've got a page space and you've got objects on that page, and that's where they are. They're never going to move. When you print something, you're printing on either sheets or rolls, and you're printing a lot of them, then they get stacked up and cut. And those cuts might be a little over here, a little down here, slightly off target from where they are in the digital file. So that's why bleed is important. I've got videos that cover this in depth, so I'm not going to go too much into it, but to say bleed is important if you've got images that go to the edge of the page and you don't want to see the end of your image and a little bit of white unprinted paper before the cut occurs. Low resolution images. I feel like in the last 10 years, this because of the proliferation of cell phone photography, people are a lot more aware of resolution than when I started doing this kind of stuff. Every bit of every digital image contains essentially a grid of pixels, and however many there are in a space is the resolution of that image. When you're looking at something on screen versus something printed, you need a little bit more information to print. So that's why when you save something off the internet or something like that, or if somebody compresses a photo for ease of email, and you use that to print, it might look worse to you in print than it does on screen. And the reason why that's bumped down from number 1 to number 2 is because we've given people the opportunity now to pre-approve, essentially, that they know they have low resolution images in their book. This happens a lot of times when we do a lot of memoirs and things of that nature, where you've got maybe an image that your grandfather scanned when he got his first scanner back in 1998, and that's the only version of that image that anyone has. So it's low resolution, but it's the best you got, and you want to proceed. Out of template can mean a lot of things. I kind of touched on it at first when I said somebody uploads a US letter document for a US trade size book or something like that. It could also mean you had your cover designed somewhere else, and you didn't provide them with our template file, so they just sort of guessed as to what the spine size might be for your book. So you might have an inch and a half thick spine on your book, but they only designed an inch thick spine. So when you upload that, you're missing a half an inch on your spine, and so you would want to take care of that. It could mean also that you did do, let's say we'll stick on with a 6x9, you did upload a 6x9 US trade book, but you didn't really adhere to like the safety instructions, so that you've got text that's really too close to the trim edge, and when we go and print, bind, and cut that book, it could either be maybe not necessarily cut off, but at least uncomfortably close to the edge of the page, or in the binding of the book, where you might have a little hard time reading it and somebody's got to really crack it open here. I mean, I always point to, like, I read a lot of cheap sci-fi paperbacks, and they're all laid out horribly, and it's a wonder any of them survive a second read, because you really got to crack them open because they cram every bit of the page with text on there. Pagina is a big one. It's kind of hard for a lot of people to understand, because when they're typing in Word, it's just page, 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 page vertically. Or if you expand it, it's page, 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 page. But that's not how a book is. So your first page in your book is your right-hand side page, because your other, the left hand is the back of the cover, which isn't part of the manuscript file for us. Some printers do it that way, but we don't. So, you want that right-hand page to be your title page, your, dedication, a lot of your front matter, you want to be a right-hand side page. Your left-hand pages, you want to have your copyright page, sometimes your table of contents, depending on what you want. But you really want to follow our instructions on how to view your PDF as a 2-page view, like a book layout, where you got one on the right, and then you go left, right, left, right, left, right. And then tied to that, but separate, because sometimes your front matter can be all in the right place, is page numbers being all on the right side, or it's commonly the right side, but typically this, we say the same side, right? So if you put all of your page numbers in the bottom right-hand corner of your file, when you're laying that out, it looks fine to you, because again, you're viewing it one page up at a time. But when you start putting that into a 2-page layout, now you've got one page in your spread where one page number is on the binding edge, and another where it's on the outside edge, and that doesn't look good. So I always suggest people to go with centering, because it's easy. But if you know what you're doing and you want them on the outside edge, you just got to set them up on the outside edge, not the inside edge, or not the inside edge and outside edge. But centering is a safe, easy bet, and it looks good.
There's just like, every time I hear about the pre-press process, I'm just like fascinated by how much goes into it. And like, I do also understand how and why authors hear all this and get a little scared, because even if you don't like, even if you work in publishing, it is still confusing. So, what are the things that you guys do to make this easy for authors? Because it's you guys are the experts, and an author is an expert in writing, and what are you guys doing to help them?
Well, hey, let me take this as a chance to sort of hype up our design and formatting services, because if what I'm talking about all sounds like nonsense to you, we've got people who can take care of this for you. But on the pre-press end, for those brave enough to try and tackle this all themselves, what can we do? What can we do? We've really, over the last 10 years, really expanded what our FAQ contains, right? So for any of these and any of the other issues on our checklist that we go through on all the books, we've pretty much have an FAQ page that explains this in great detail. We're also trying to point out, if we can, specific instances in your book where you can look at this and maybe correlate, like, okay, when I look at this as a finished book, not the digital file, how's that going to work? But we've done a lot of videos too that I think people really have an easier time watching a 2-minute video and seeing a visual example with a printed finished book and how it moves and reacts. I think that kind of helps people bridge the gap between what they're looking at on their screen and what's going to arrive in their hands physically. So I think that's maybe one of the biggest movers that we've sort of, you know, worked on, is really beefing up that FAQ and trying to make a video for anything that really benefits from having a moving example, you know, there.
So what would be the case for an author who comes to us with an already they already have a cover design they want to use, but they're having difficulties like using it within our templates? What would be the suggestion for an author like that?
Yeah, so we used to sort of just have two flavors, right? You either give it to us correctly, or at least almost correctly, and we can nudge it over the finish line for you, or we create it for you from scratch. And we realized that this didn't work for everybody. You know, we have people who have a designer and they've, you know, maybe sort of exhausted the goodwill of that person. Maybe they didn't like working with them and they really don't want to have to go back to them and ask for these you know, changes and everything. You know, we always joke, the long running joke has been my designer's out of the country. You know, they can't reach them anymore. So like, what can you do to help me finish this? So we did recognize a need that we have to take, you know, files that are for all intents and purposes completed designs. They're just not set up properly for what this author has ordered. So we have a templating service that we can help with your cover for that. And we have a few services that we can offer for the interior as well, particularly, you know, something to help add bleed. I will say I'll take this advantage to really stress the importance of the best bleed is going to come from a properly designed layout with bleed. The way that automation that we can utilize to add bleed for you has some disadvantages. It's almost universally better than proceeding without bleed. But for certain things, like, you know, like let's say this is the edge of your page and you have an image that comes up here. So the way it adds bleed is it takes that and flips it around. So you've got a repeat of the last eighth of an inch of that page. So if that gets cut and it shows more of that bleed, you might have something where it's sort of like a face and then a repeat of the face, depending on what's the page. So, you know, if you lay it out properly and you export your PDF properly with bleed, you don't have that concern. So, you know, it's best to come there. But with the covers, you know, we don't have to worry about an entire manuscript, so we can take a little bit more time with the covers. And, you know, if we've got to fill bleed or something like that, we can use clone stamping and content aware fills and things of that nature, and produce a better bleed than automation alone can produce for a manuscript. It just takes too much time because there's so many pages in a manuscript. But with the cover and our cover templating service, we can do a great job with taking an incomplete something. Say you you know, for example, had designed a soft cover, but you're now ordering a hard cover, and you want us to take care of converting that soft cover, which is, again, I'll stick to 6x9 because it's the most popular trim size. So it's 9 inches high, but the actual hardcover book, because you want your case to extend beyond your manuscript, your book block a little bit, that actually needs to be 9.25. So any, you know, if you had bleed in your 6x9 file, it would be 9.25 inches high. So you're already, the bleed of your image already only makes it to your now trim line. So you've got an extra 5/8 of an inch bleed to account for. So it can get tricky.
It can. And, you know, there are all these big things that you are noticing that without you in place, it wouldn't be a professionally done book. And I think like this service and what you guys are doing every day makes it okay. Like, you're going to get a professionally done book, and your book is going to look good, and it's going to print right. And that's there's just so much value to that.
Our goal is to make it so that what you're going to get matches anything you could walk into a bookstore and get. Now, it's dependent upon your formatting and part of that. But, you know, if we just let your pagination go and you only viewed your file in that one page up layout, you might be like, oh, all my, all everything I thought was going to be on a right page is on a left page. This is all wrong. But it's that's how you laid out the file, and missed that step in the proofing. You could have a lot. You could have 50 books that you just hate the way they look because nobody took a look at it and said, actually, I think you want to add a blank page to the beginning and reset this pagination or something like that.
So there are these huge issues like bleed, pagination, but what are some of like the smaller, more discrete issues that you pick up on that maybe an author is not, if an author is trying to take this on themselves, they might not actually be thinking quite as much about?
A common problem like that's kind of there that's maybe not super obvious is like stuff with like the metadata.
Mhm.
There's a lot of rules with the metadata that if we didn't check that, that could get your book taken down off of distributor partner pages down the road because you're referencing in an ebook, you're referencing a physical page number. Well, an ebook doesn't have physical page numbers in that way. So page 100 is not the same between any two readers unless they're on something with identical settings. But so you can't reference a page number in your like you get in your book description. You're not going to believe what happens on page 100. Well, page 100 is
Right.
going to be different everybody. So that kind of stuff, it's really probably not in the forefront of anyone's mindset when they're working on something like that. But just that's just the kind of stuff we have to be aware of and keep an eye out for and make sure it doesn't slip through and cause you problems down the line.
Yeah, there's a lot of little things. Like I know there are specific rules when it comes to back to metadata. Like if you can't use another, like if you have a book about wizards, you can't use like Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling and keywords. Like there
Yes,
are little things.
my book about space wizards cannot mention the word Jedi, George Lucas, Star Wars, lightsaber. I can have a light sword. I could have a laser, saber or something. But you can get into like B movie knockoff level writing of it if that's what you want to do. But yeah, no, you can't reference specific things pulled from popular media that will I get it, right? You want to put as much search, power behind your title as you can with those keywords and things of that nature. But yeah, that people frown upon that. So yeah, not allowed. Yep.
Yeah, and there are just so many little aspects to book publishing that people don't really realize. And when you think about it in the big picture, people are always like, oh yeah, cover design and advertising. But like, you guys in here at BookBaby, you're like the hidden engine that nobody really knows how it works, but you need it. And I guess my final question is, what would you say is the value of having like very dedicated people doing this work rather than automation? Because it's so detailed, and I think having people here doing it makes a big difference.
Well, you hit on two things. I'll take a minute to talk about there. So we utilize some automation, right? So when I get your PDF, I've actually already had automation pre-flight that, and it's going to tell me where those low resolution images are in your book, and it's going to tell me if there's no fonts and all that kind of stuff. And really, that automation is just enabling me to look at 30 books a day instead of 10 because I don't have to run those reports locally and things like that. But what you're getting there is you're getting the eyes and brain of a person who for years now has looked at tens of thousands of manuscripts. Maybe it's hard to say at this point. But between all the operators, like just how many manuscripts we've all had eyes on, and you as an author are maybe writing your first or second book, and you probably read a lot and you have some idea of how a book looks, but if you're not an experienced layout artist, like, you might not be able to pull something off the shelf and go, okay, cool, I want to go with a 9.5 body font and this kind of spacing between, and not to say that we're going to critique your design. That's not the point of Prepress. We're not here to say, oh, looks bad or good. We don't make value judgments about designs and that thing. We're going off of a set of like hard criteria we can measure against. So, yes, we're using some automation, but it's not a completely automated system that just upload your PDF and, you maybe get some feedback on it that you may or may not understand and just have to click OK. And so,
Right.
Like, I guess everything's fine. I don't know. It told me this, said something about RGB images. I don't know. I'm a writer. What do I know about it? Right. Like, it's up for nerds
Exactly.
like me, what color modes are all about and help you, when it's an important thing. Right. If let's say you're an author and you just heard, okay, InDesign is the program that it's going to take me to do this. So you watch some YouTube videos and you stumble your way through doing a layout or whatever, and in the process you accidentally applied a spot color to the thing, but you're paying for CMYK printing. We're not doing spot color printing here. So now you've got this PDF and you've got a spot color in there. And for people who aren't familiar with spot color, is essentially like if you've got like Coca-Cola red or Tiffany blue or something like that, that's not made in printing by mixing the four color inks, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. That's actually a big old pot of ink that is specifically that color, so it doesn't vary, right? So you may have accidentally put one of those in your book, but we're not going to print that. And if we convert that to CMYK, it might be very different. An example, if you used a CMYK metallic, you wanted it to look gold or something like that. Well, when we convert that to CMYK, it might look like really kind of sickly green. So like we're gonna put that back to you and be like, hey, you're using a metallic Pantone, which we can't print in your book for you. You really want to convert that to something, CMYK, so you can go back and say, oh, okay, I see where I used that swatch. Let me convert that. Ooh, that conversion looks real bad. I want to go with something way more yellow than this green automated color correlation came up with. Yeah. I forget. What was I talking about? I feel like I just got off on a tangent about spot.
So I think just there having the value of people doing this work, and obviously automation is a tool, but at the end of the day, you're relying on people who care.
Right. You want human experience. Right. You want somebody who cares. You want somebody who's looked at a lot of manuscripts and understands what they're looking at on screen and how that's going to become a printed physical product in the case of a print book, or how it's going to convert in the case of an ebook. You want that, you want that knowledge, know-how, and human touch.
Yeah. And you guys pick up on so much stuff that I is beyond me. And if I were an author, I'd be very confident, because they're all in good hands. And at the end of the day, it leads to professional print ready products that look great and read great and lead to some happy authors and happy readers.
Look at a couple thousand manuscripts, Joe, and it'll start to click for you.
It'll start. Well, John, that's all I got for you. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And for everyone watching, we'll see you next time.